And now, the survival show that once survived wearing a My Little Pony tactical bike helmet to the zombie apocalypse. In this episode, we sit down with David Mad Duo Merrill. He's a writer for Breach Bang Clear, Recoil Magazine, and a few other tactical rags I'm sure you've heard of. As a retired Marine and foreign weapons instructor, he's got the chops to tell us about gear and real-world use. So, if you've been wanting to kit up, or just love gear, and who doesn't, sit back and relax. Howdy, and welcome to In the Rabbit Hole's Urban Survival Podcast. This is episode number 161. I'm your host, Aaron, and you are in the rabbit hole. Safe and sound. Before we go straight into it, a quick warning for y'all. We drop some F-bombs in this episode and generally sling a little bit of profanity. So you may want to listen to this away from tender ears if that's a thing for you. Next up, I came up with a really cool idea for a second weekly episode. As many of y'all know from the last week's episode, I'm considering doing one or even two more additional weekly episodes. One for Wednesdays and one for Fridays. This one that I'm thinking of will be for Fridays. Now, if you're a member hanging out in the ITRH Armada secret Facebook group, you already know what I'm talking about here, and y'all even helped me validate the idea. For everyone else, you'll find out in about 4 weeks. I think y'all are really going to enjoy it. With that said, consider supporting the show and helping us keep doing what we're doing here for you by visiting itrh.net. Again, itrh.net. Visit it today to find out about cool membership benefits. Now, let's welcome David Mad Duo Merrill onto ITRH. David, welcome to the show, man.
Hello.
Now, we first met at the Death Valley Magazine Mobile Scout School, and I was admiring your kit, and then it turns out you do this kind of stuff professionally. So let's start here with who you are, what you do, and what you did, and why you know so much about kit.
Well, all right. My name is Dave Merrill. I'm a Marine Corps veteran. Been to Iraq a couple times, West Africa. I was an instructor at the Urban Warfare Training Center, focusing on foreign weapons before I got out. Since then, aside from college and everything else, I'm a terrible technical writer for a couple of publications. And some foreign, which is always interesting because you don't know what sarcasm is like in Slovenia or Poland. I'm an awful photographer. A lazy instructor, kind of a dick, and I love tacos.
Way to sell yourself, man. That's awesome. We need a party next time you're in town. That's great. So that's interesting. I actually didn't know about the urban warfare and foreign weapons part, and just to have some fun starting off, and I wasn't even expecting to ask you this, but AK versus M4. What are your thoughts there?
I'm fairly comfortable with either one. I'm not going to be crying myself to sleep. Now I'm like, okay, well, what's your go-to? Scar CQC. So, I mean, I guess in the cake pie war, I picked brownies.
Nicely done, sir. Very cool. So what are your thoughts on like the FAL?
I like it. They're heavy. I almost look at a FAL like I look at an M1A or an M14, except for it was nowhere close to the failure that the M14 was.
Mm-hmm.
For when it was developed, it was a fantastic gun, but it's not adaptive enough to be suitable for a modern battlefield. I don't think. I mean, just like a lot of things, I mean, you can certainly use it and you can do well with it, but there are better options. I mean, it's one of those things again. I mean, people get caught up in the minutia of this or that, and some guns are better than other guns, just like some cars are better than other cars. But, if you have to take a Jeep or a Land Rover or a Toyota Corolla someplace, you're gonna take it.
Mm-hmm.
So
They're all better than walking.
Yeah, yeah, it's a good way to put it, I suppose.
Well, that's pretty cool. The Scar is actually I think the only rifle that I haven't had a chance to play with it yet. And I know it got a lot of hype in the beginning, and then it got some bad press. But that's now your kind of go-to weapon.
Yeah, I kind of go back and forth between this Scar CQC, and I've got a short M4 that I like a lot. I mean, with the short-barreled guns for a long time, they were frowned upon. Especially when you're dealing with ammunition that's velocity dependent for its wounding mechanism. But with the appropriate ammo, like a Mark 318 Mod 0, which is the SOST, SOST round, meant for short barrels, it's very good. And Barnes TSX, I mean, they go through intermediate barriers, better, stay on track better, and aren't velocity dependent. And really what you get with a shorter barrel versus a long barrel is you get a reduced velocity. So as long as you accommodate that with the appropriate ammunition, they're pretty good. I mean, there's literally no reason you can't shoot a short-barreled 5.56 at 600 meters, with the exception of your eyesight or skill. So, or magnified optics, something like that. But you take a nice scope that you put in like a DMR and put it on a short-barreled rifle that has a free float barrel and everything else, you can tag targets pretty far with them. So,
what's been your experience with, say, 300 Blackout? Speaking of short barrels,
300 Blackout, I think, is a niche round. I mean, it's a nice, fun niche, but I mean, I don't see a point to it unless you are going short-barreled and suppressed. Some guys like it for hunting. I mean, that's true, but I mean, it's really the 300 Blackout is I mean, boy, is it quiet. It's a big, heavy, slow round, limited envelope of usability. I like to say it is AAC's answer to J.D. Jones's answer to the Russian solution developed in the 70s, fielded in the 80s, the Vintorez 9mm by 39 caliber, which was the same kind of thing. A very much larger than a 300 Blackout, some loadings, because it was a 7.62 by 39 case necked up to 9mm, as opposed to a 5.56 case necked to a 30 cal. But I mean, so it's I think in the niche, I think it's great. That niche would probably be for practical use, like 200 meters or less.
I've gone to it, and I was very hesitant to get into it at first, but I've gone to it primarily because I am in a large urban environment. And while with iron sights, even my skill level goes out pretty far, in an urban environment, especially in an environment like Houston, where it's very flat and very kind of closed in, there's not a lot of big open spaces. It made more sense for me, but I do at the same time kind of look at that, there's not a lot of distance to it. So I would have to switch off to something else if the zombie apocalypse came tomorrow and I needed to take longer shots. But of course, therein lies the problem. It's the zombie apocalypse is not coming tomorrow, so I probably don't need to be taking 600-meter shots inside the city.
Well, it's interesting, though. As long as you know your drops, I mean, you can get out pretty far. I mean, the question becomes how long is it going to take to do it? I mean, actually, I was in El Paso a few months ago at the BORTAC, the Border Patrol Tactical Unit, conference on Fort Bliss, and we had a 10.5-inch barrel 300 Blackout, and I popped a 600-meter steel with it.
Oh wow!
I mean, but we're in the desert, and I'm shooting with a background that kicks up dust, and so I saw the steel and held it where I thought I should, and then I saw the dust kick up, and then I just adjusted, and we were able to hit it pretty consistently. But I mean, once again, I mean, you couldn't anticipate doing that, in a life or death situation. I mean, the same thing can be said about shooting a handgun at 300 meters, and there are people that have done that before, certainly. But it doesn't mean that your 9mm handgun is effective to 300 meters.
Yeah, and speaking of bullets, I guess to switch gears to, in some ways, protecting against bullets, one of the things we were going to start with today was just discussing body armor, and it's not one of those things, particularly in the preparedness side of things. You do see it picked up in like Recoil and in some of your writings, actually quite a bit of your writings, I think, if I remember correctly, but not so much in the survival and preparedness community, although I know a lot of people that have invested a lot of money to it, and the question always becomes like, what did they get, and is that reasonable or is that effective? So what has been your experience with body armor?
Well, I mean, I had all the issued stuff and stuff I liked and stuff I didn't. And I do think that, well, the prices have certainly come down. And the advent of the very inexpensive AR-500 stuff, a lot of people have been giving more consideration to. I don't think I've ever seen anything that I would call concealable.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's not a soft vest. When someone talks about concealable hard plates, what I found what they really mean is if you're wearing a wrapper jacket inside a car at nighttime, someone may not notice right away.
Yeah.
I mean, but, we've had, an increase in technology and a corresponding decrease in price on the older stuff. I think sometimes in the U.S. military, I think we've focused on it a little bit too much. You always have to balance weight, mobility, and capability. And sometimes I think that if the congressmen had their way, everyone would be waddling around in EOD suits,
There's an interesting visual.
Yeah. And, for my personal cutoff was side plates. At first, when we got Sappies, I was like, oh, these suck. And then we got E-Sappies, which are, much heavier. And like, oh, these are terrible. And they add in side plates. And I mean, hey, we're a resilient species. We get used to a lot. But regarding the AR-500 stuff, I've seen some practices from some companies that it would make me, aside from any other issues with AR-500, like spalling and whatnot, it would make me very uncomfortable wearing a non-rated AR-500 plate.
Mm.
In one instance, someone was taking flat piece of AR-500 and, cutting out the kind of the sappy plate with a plasma cutter and then bending it and, put all the metal through all this stress and then just putting the original rating on it. And it's like, and the companies that actually go through all the quality control and everything else, I mean, those cost almost as much as a sappy that's not going to spall. Now, like a ceramic plate will still spall. The new Army requirements for the new carriers actually, it's 1 inch of liner that overlaps the edge of your plates, because even a ceramic, a sappy, e-sappy, even that, and some of the new plastics, those will still spall. You'll still get some jacket on them. Steels just do it a lot more.
Mm. Now, to back up for just a second for people that aren't familiar, what does it mean when something spalls?
Okay, so when a round or another projectile hits the armor, and the armor absorbs all that force, the round will break up or shed the jacket, the exterior copper coating, and kind of send it flying off in a given direction. And and those become secondary fragmentations that can hurt or kill you. If you're shot with a very, very fast round and the bullet doesn't penetrate, but the jacket shears off and goes into your armpit or your face, you can die. And steel plates it's a big problem with steel plates. I mean, the steel absorbs a lot of impact. If you ever shot, target steel, you can see that quite a bit, especially with high-powered rounds. That's why it takes a certain grade of steel and you have a certain safe distance so you don't get hit by the spall. In this case, it's like wearing a steel target around your chest and you're enveloped around it. So it's not like you're back 20 meters or something like that.
Right. It's not Hollywood. So now you were saying something about the side plates earlier. Do those actually become unbearable?
I found them uncomfortable. They kind of get in the way of your flexibility. There's some lighter ones. There's some heavier ones. They were developed because every armor system has gaps in it. I know for us personally, especially when we were towards in Western Iraq, towards the Syrian border, some enemy with some precision capability who are specifically going for seam shots. Shoot guys in between that gap between the front and the back carrier, and then it was just overall coverage for IED protection. But I mean, the interceptor IOTV stuff had that soft ballistic panels, which will stop some fragmentation, but we're not stopping any kind of high-powered round. And as that increased, and then it becomes, well, let's add this, and let's add this, and add this. And I mean, some of the stuff has gotten very lightweight, but the lightest weight, best stuff is prohibitively expensive right now. Like there is a standalone level 4 that weighs 3.5 pounds, and you're also going to pay $1,000 for it.
Oh, wow. Is that $1,000 front and back, I hope?
No, that's each.
Wow.
I mean, it's half. I mean, but it's under half the weight. It's made of some. It's made of plastic, and it's pretty thin, and it's standalone. You don't even need in conjunction. In conjunction with means the plate will stop X, Y, and Z, provided it's on top of soft armor. And this is standalone. It's pretty sexy stuff, and
now, who's
something that
making
if
that?
I were still doing this for a living, I might stab someone for. But
Now, who's making that?
there's a couple of companies, but I don't think I want to talk about it specifically who.
Okay. So now you mentioned body level armor levels. What are the different levels?
Basically, all it means is what they're rated against. So for it to be protected against like center fire rifle, it's going to be a level 3 or a level 4. In some instances, a level 3 will be better than a level 4 because it may be a multi-hit, and a level 4 isn't required for that. But I mean, I have to pull out the whole chart because this, body armor that has there's a certification process, and they have set requirements, and either it meets it or it exceeds it or it doesn't meet it. And a lot of these companies, when they're talking about their NIJ ratings, actually haven't tested it, haven't set it off someplace. It can be just be a guy doing it in his backyard.
Oh, wow.
And that's what you don't want. That's what you don't want. You want someone that's actually been tested for it. So,
okay. When you're looking at it, do you look at, especially from sort of an urban standpoint, do you look at it more from a balance of maneuverability versus protection, or do you look at it? Have you found that it's more about protection than maneuverability? How do you personally find that works out?
Well, that's a good. I mean, this is always going to be situational. I mean, that's when we talk about gear, we always have to talk about scaling, because not everything is going to be, Wanat, Afghanistan. So I think the amount of body armor you're wearing depends on your activities and what the situation is like, outside. Chances are, if I have a rifle in my hands in public, not being an open carry, but like I have a rifle actively in public, I'm going to want a plate carrier at minimum. And the same should go, I think, same on the law enforcement side. I know a lot of guys that have a plate carrier next to the rifle in their trunk. So if they have the time or opportunity, they'll throw the plate carrier around. It's like a quick don carrier and grab the rifle. And if they don't, just grab the rifle and go.
So are they actually throwing that on over their softer body armor?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so there's a couple of really nice minimalist carriers that are just kind of for that. So, and even then, if they don't have their soft armor on, that'll offer some protection depending on what plates you're using. But, the same kind of thought process is if I'm going to grab this rifle, if I have time to throw this on, I will. Before kind of the plates and all that were, it's just SWAT officers would have them. And then with the more active shooter stuff we've seen in the last, 15, 16 years, I mean, the first responders are the regular street cops. I mean, we saw the mistake in Columbine of waiting for SWAT to get there and secure. And so, the guys who are most likely to use their rifles in a given situation, kind of like a randomly day-to-day thing, or the ones that have, usually the least amount of training with them.
Hmm.
Whereas, SWAT guys are there serving warrants and stuff like that and grabbing people. But, they're not the first responders to an active shooter. A school shooting, workplace shooting, whatever.
Hmm. Going on from the plate carriers and such, helmets. And this is kind of a weird thing. And I always look at it as, gosh, I mean, a helmet seems like a good idea. I don't want traumatic brain injury or something else if I'm doing things. But do helmets actually make sense? We'll take it from the zombie apocalypse standpoint. Would you put a helmet on in the zombie apocalypse?
I didn't like wearing a helmet even when I was required to wear a helmet. And I have yet to really volunteer to put one on. Helmets are one of those things that for some reason you see a picture of it and you're like, man, that looks cool. And you have a $700 Team Wendy or Ops Core or something like that, 700 plus. And you put it on, you're like, oh, I remember why I hate this bullshit. If you're wearing night vision, it can make sense, because it's a nice place to mount your night vision. Except even then, I think that's kind of like a thinly veiled excuse for guys, playing dress up or whatever. And actually kicking around the idea of putting a vast shroud, which is one of the night vision attachment points, on a My Little Pony unicorn kind of helmet, and be like, what? It's just for night vision, because you're not going to wear a My Little Pony bike helmet unless you have to, right?
Right.
So I mean, yeah, I'm not a big fan of helmets. I mean, they have a place. I've done some spelunking and stuff like that, and I was required to have a helmet for that.
Mm.
Okay, cool. I didn't wear an Ops Core helmet for it. I got a Petzl. That's what it's made for. So not a big fan. I mean, certainly, you can protect your noggin and everything else, but a lot of that I think falls under the looks awesome kind of camp, because if you wear it every day, all day, it gets old real fast.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so does body armor too. I'll tell you that.
Yeah. I've got a lot of friends that are officers, and they're constantly tugging and bitching about their body armor. I think one of the funniest things I've seen, and actually, it was funny to look at, but it made perfect sense, is there was some magazine, and it was some kind of clip-on attachment for the AC units and the squad car, and you stick it down your armor. And I was like, that looks silly, but I bet those guys are like begging for those.
It had a quick disconnect if you had to bail out of your car.
Mm-hmm.
I saw the grown-up version of that, where it was a suit you put on. It almost looked like one of the flight suits that they wore, like the old Soviet ones that laced up, and I think the American ones did too, to keep all the blood in your head so you don't pass out, or keep your blood distributed equally, whatever. It looked like that, and it had cooling tubes in it, and they had a hot one and they had a cold one. So if you were in an aircraft in the desert or in a piece of armor, you could plug it in and it would keep you cool through a central AC unit. And then the warm one was, for winter warfare, or whatever. It's like those electric gloves, or I guess like an electric heated motorcycle suit you wear underneath your regular stuff. So it was kind of like the $300,000 solution to the $30 police clip-on air conditioning thing.
Nice. As far as one of the other things, you had a really cool battle belt on, and battle belts were always something that I kind of looked at but never really spent a lot of time on, but I got the sense of that they're actually extremely convenient and helpful, and not just a belt to hold up your pants, but actually the bigger, wider belts to put things on, so that listeners get a sense of what we're talking about here. Kind of walk us through those for a second, because at first they look bulky and they look like they'd be a giant pain in the ass.
The way things are currently set up, I think people have different opinions on it. There's been kind of in some units a walk away from the battle belt, and then in a lot of Marine units, there's the way it has been. Let me talk about my viewpoints of the battle belt. Well, it's where I always put my secondary weapon. I put my handgun on a battle belt. And, you put handgun, you put mags, you put a blowout kit, something like that, like, a medical kit, a dump pouch. And the idea being that you can always have that belt with you. In the beginning, when we started wearing, holsters with armor, you'd have to have, a drop leg holster, which, I hate. I mean, I don't like having stuff on my legs, but it was unavoidable for a long time.
Mm.
It would go on like your regular belt. And if you ever, carry a gun every day, CCW or whatever with like a regular belt, it sucks. They sag, they pull your pants down. You have to take it off. You'd have to get half naked. You have to unbuckle everything if you had to go take a shit or something like that. And mounting it to an exterior belt that goes over your regular pants belt meant that you could just, if you had to take a shit or something like that, you can just boom, unclip your belt, unclip the leg strap if you have one, and that's it. But the idea of kind of having layered gear is that that belt is always with you. So you need to do something lighter weight. You're not going to have a plate carrier on and everything else. You can still clip that belt. You have like kind of the basics that you need. You have mags, you have ammo, you have stuff without having to have a full overt rig on. And I've got a lot of different rigs. I've got everything from a minimalist to a full on holy shit I'm back in Fallujah rig. And the belt is constant through all of those. And some guys will even go with the minimalist belt setup. But the way we used to say is that there's 3 lessons that we learned from cowboys about operating in the desert. And that is always have a big hat, always have a neckerchief, or in my case, a desert scarf, and have your guns in a separate belt. So take off your armor if you have to do something, but then if you have to take a shit, you take off your fighting belt, and then you still have your armor on top. And so it's just kind of a modular way to look at it. And you can always scale up or scale down.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. And, and going back to the drop leg holsters, and you were talking about you don't like things on your leg. And in Texas, we're about to have open carry here. And so I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people going to drop leg holsters and stuff like that. What was your experience with having to do that? And you guys did it to get it away from your armor.
Yes.
So, and I guess that's the big takeaway is y'all only did it because you needed to get the gun away from your armor. But what is it actually like? And why is that aggravating to carry one on your leg?
Well, there's some simple mistakes it seems like people always make them. And one, they wear them way too low. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if that's like from a Hollywood watching the cowboy quick draw stuff or what. But I mean, when your arms are relaxed at your sides, the lowest it should be is the web of your thumb should go right in that back strap. If it's any lower, it's too low. And we're used to carrying a gun on our belt line, just right there at 3 o'clock, something like that, the kind of traditional place. And the problem is, so like the belt line, everyone likes the belt line. You can have good control of your gun and whatnot, but then you put armor on there, you can't get to it, and it gets in the way. So then you have a drop. The solution for a long time, actually, I'll date myself here. It was the Black Hawk drop leg with the two leg straps. And what we did at the time was he took off the top leg strap completely and made that bottom leg strap basically a nut hugger. And so it's up as high as it can. So you have your gun as high as it can be without impeding your draw, without your armor impeding your draw. And what that ends up being is actually just a couple inch drop. And now we have a lot of options. A Blade Tech drop and offset is what I use right now with a Safari land attachment system because, it's America, damn it. I'm going to mix and match everything. But then there's Safari land hangers, and all the companies will have a hanger to drop it just a little bit. But we're at a point where they can maintain the rigidity needed without a leg strap. And the reason I don't like stuff on my legs is, well, one, it's harder to take everything on and off. So you have to put on your center belt and then you have to attach your leg straps and stuff like that. Now, if you're overseas on a patrol, how long it takes to put gear on doesn't really matter that much because, it'll matter somewhat, but not really. If you're going for a patrol and it's planned and it's set out, you have time to go over everything, put your gear on, check everything. Whereas stateside, civilian in CONUS, when are you going to put it on? I mean, very rarely are you going to be like, we're going to go here at this time, unless you're in law enforcement. But for you and me, if we're throwing that stuff on, it's going to be hasty more than likely, and it's added time to put things on, and then if you didn't strap them down, everything's flopping around. It's added time to take it off. One of the big issues we had before was people drowning in irrigation systems.
Really?
Couldn't get your gear off fast enough. So like a Humvee would roll into an irrigation system, and then almost everyone in the truck would die.
Oh, shit.
Because you have all this armor, all this stuff on, you can't get out of it. And that's when they started the quick release systems. The faster you can get out of something. And actually, then if you're wounded, let's say you're hurt and you need to get to something on the back of your belt. Right now, you can just unbuckle leg straps, you can unbuckle that buckle and you can pull it around your body if you have to. And you can't do that with the leg straps either. And just your mobility sucks. You can't run as fast with leg straps on. It's uncomfortable. You get more friction burns and stuff like that. I hate subloads and leg straps, is what it comes down to. And then when it's low, you get shit banging into your knees. And yeah.
Yeah, that sounds like a big pain in the ass. It seems like they would be a big pain in the ass in a vehicle too.
Yeah, and then in doorways and things like that. I actually like to, when I have put my handgun down, I have it slightly forward. So it's not like directly at 3 o'clock. It's slightly forward, and that reduces my horizontal profile, and it also puts my gun where I can see it and control it more easily. So it's not like it's all the way around front appendix where you can like have like a crazy mother-in-law grip on it if you have to, but it's right there. You can see it and you can control it better, and it doesn't impede your draw. So that's where I like to put them.
Okay. Now, totally skipping around the body here. What about as far as hearing protection go? Do you just go old-fashioned, good old, little neoprene earplugs, or not neoprene, whatever the rubber they're made out of is, or do you actually go with the higher tech hearing protection?
Well, in the middle of the night, once again, it's kind of about scalability, right? Like, I don't have an ear pro next to my home defense guns. I'm just going to shoot. And, we can get into the science of auditory exclusion, but the problem is that any physiological response like that is going to be different for everybody. So it's going to be really loud. You're not going to notice. And all that means little or nothing, I think, in a fight for your life. Ear pro, I'd rather use an active ear pro than anything else. So something that amplifies normal conversation and then suppresses loud noises like gunshots. And that way you can have a conversation with somebody, and still keep your hearing safe. I think I'd almost make it a requirement for any kind of firearms related class. It doesn't have to be that expensive. Now, the most popular that I see on the low end of things are the Howard Light Impact Pro Sports. I don't know, they're like $50, something like that. The audio quality, I don't like that much, and I don't think they're comfortable for long periods of time. But to do better than those, you have to spend considerably more. I like Peltor Comtac, Comtacs 2s and 3s. I would like a pair of 4s, and then with some gel earpieces, they're pretty comfy. MSA Sword-ins as well. The audio quality is a lot better. But once again, you're paying a lot more for them. 7 times more, 8 times more in some cases. I actually have another pair of Peltors. They're in-ear active ear pro, and they're pretty neat actually. But your own voice is still loud to you because of the bone conduction when they're in your ears. But they're pretty handy. At the range doing stuff, or maybe in a disaster situation, and if I'm wearing a carrier, I'll put some ear pro on. Why not? Especially if it's something that it can enhance your hearing, then it's not going to be a disabler. Whereas but if it was between the foamy rubber, gasketed ones and nothing, I will go with nothing, because I'm not trying to go out actively in a sensory deprivation chamber,
Yeah.
and that's what those are. That's why you wear them when you're on an airplane or you try to go to sleep or something like that. It's to dull your senses, and that's I would not want that at
Mm.
all.
Moving on to, as long as we're talking about sensory protection, goggles and eye protection. As somebody who's had to deal with it and deal with it on a regular basis, and as far as protecting your eyes, and then there's the goggles, and then there's the wraparounds, and then there's just, wear a pair of sunglasses. Where did you kind of land with that in having to wear them on what I would imagine was a somewhat regular basis?
Oh yeah, well, it's funny, the evolution of anything you do in the military that becomes dangerous. In the beginning, OIF-1, we had those big stupid plastic Desert Storm goggles, and they don't offer any ballistic protection. It was just to keep, it was a functional thing to keep dirt and dust out of your eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a pair of ESS goggles, which were, man, those were king shit of fuck mountain, a long time ago.
Uh-huh.
And they fog up, and you have to deal with them. And once IEDs started, it became a thing. Like, you have to wear eye pro. You're going to lose your eyes. And I know a lot of guys that got shrapnel in their lenses and in their goggles, a little bit on their face, but it saved their eyes. And it was a very salient reminder of why to wear your eye pro. And anything, the safety rated eye pro is what you want, like ballistic rated eye pro. Actually, Andrew Toohey of the Ver Vapin blog, or however you said it, had a very good comparison where he shot up a bunch of eye pro a few years ago, and he showed what worked and what didn't. But like anything else, if it's not comfortable, if it fogs up, you're not going to wear it. And so it became like, oh shit, we should use this to save our eyes. Don't be a dumbass and always wear your eye pro, to, oh my God, your eye pro is off. You're in trouble. We're charging you. And it's almost like a seatbelt law. People in the front seat of a car, I don't care if you have a seatbelt on or not. In the back seat, you can become like a secondary projectile and, kill people up front, as you go flying forward. But like in the front seat of the car, you're literally only going to kill yourself. So I don't care if you have a seatbelt on or not. And I don't care if you wear eye pro or not. Like if we're just two Joes on the street, I don't care if you wear an eye pro. I'd recommend it, But we're also talking about, and because of the eye pro, it became such a issue with shrapnel. Now you have to wear them on every military range and everything else. And before we didn't wear any of that. I think there's plenty of great reasons to wear eye pro and save your eyes. A rifle goes kaboom. You have an overpressure event. You literally can lose your eyes. So, eye pro. Just get something good and rated. Now, anything is better than nothing, but there's Revision and Oakley and Wiley X, and there's a lot of companies that have, decent eye pro. So, I would say wear it, if you have the opportunity, or if you need to. And that shit does get expensive very, very quickly. Yes. I do admit. A pair of Oakley M frames or, whatever Revision we're on now is there. They can be pretty expensive, but they don't have to be. One thing is that the problem with some of the cheaper stuff is that they're not optically correct. And that can come into play a lot. And I'll see a guy who has a $2,000 rifle with a scope that costs like $1,500, and looking through his scope through a $2 pair of shooting glasses, and it doesn't make sense sometimes with that.
Yeah,
and if you're looking at something and shit looks warped, that's not good either. So, I think a decent, you don't have to go expensive. I think having just a pair of name brand safety rated ones would be a nice bare minimum if you're, shooting or something like that. I can't say that I have eye pro sitting on top of a bug eye bag though. No.
Okay.
But my everyday sunglasses are ballistic rated, so
Well, then there you go. You've always got your eye pro.
well, I guess you're right. Shit. Never mind.
Foiled again. Damn eye pro. As far as the getting into kind of the minutia of the attachments onto vests and things like that, there's all kinds of different mag pouches out there. What do you find yourself really going towards and really kind of cottoning to?
The high-speed gear tacos have been my favorite since they came out because I could, I talked about foreign weapons and stuff like that, and I can put AK mags in them real easily, and I can put AR mags in them real easy. I think they should be about an inch taller for AK mags, but they still retain them pretty well. You can put mags in, an up or down orientation depending on what the rig setup is and everything else, and they keep them reasonably secure, and you can add top straps to them. You can get more debris in them. I mean, there's all pluses and minuses. I liked the tacos because of their wide range of usability. If I was crawling around in the mud, I would probably have old school Velcro flap over the top, pouches. But there's also some thought to you give some thought or consideration to have your first mag, your primary loading position magazine, be in a Kydex or like an ITW fast mag, and then there's a couple other ones like that. Have your first load be in a Kydex or similar pouch. Blade Tech has one. Raven Concealment has them. Everyone has these because getting that mag out is quicker than shit. And so your primary reload point, pulling that from an open pouch like that, and then the rest can be kind of covered because the rest are kind of backfill, almost administration. And so you go then you have your load plan from there, but your first reload coming from a fast mag or a Kydex pouch, something like that, is there's a good argument to be made for that.
Okay, very interesting. Now, when I had Chris Hernandez on, he was telling us how much he hated shmogs and battle scarves and such, and so this is really just for fun to talk to somebody who's as melaninly, I'm making up words now, challenged as I am. How did you end up with the headscarves?
Actually, I don't like shmogs that much. I think that they're big and bulky. I like, and actually, if you look at the pictures, and actually I just wrote about this recently, what I like is actually called the neckerchief. And it is basically, the spec says it's supposed to be 6 feet long. It's usually like 5 feet long, 2 feet wide, and it's brown t-shirt material. And it is the neckerchief, men's brown. There's an NSN, and they're like $4 each. And I like to use those because you can use them for almost everything, but it's not thick and bulky like a shemagh is. Keep the sun off your neck, wipe down your gun, wipe off your face. It's a towel. Anything you can do with a bandana, you can do with a neckerchief. Almost everything you can do with a shemagh, you can use as a neckerchief. You can use it as a cravat. You can use it as a regretful toilet paper if you have to.
There's a lot of pooping going on in war, man.
Yeah, I was talking to one of my friends, and he said, all of my bad memories revolve around poop overseas. And I'm like, all my nightmares did. I had nightmares about having like stomach cramps on a convoy. I never did. Hernandez did. He's got a fun story about it. But I was worried about it. And one of my friends got stuck in a vehicle for 13 hours, and lots of pooping in boxes going on there. Yeah. I mean, it's just one of those things that, people don't give a lot of consideration. Even just like regular people that don't go camping haven't put a lot of thought, oftentimes haven't put a lot of thought about like, how do you poop in the woods? Mm-hmm. And then add to that all this stuff you have.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those things that it's not sexy to talk about, and it's not particularly fun, but guess what? You have to do it. Mm-hmm. And it's just one of those things people should, go out and try. I'm not saying dig a hole in your backyard and go out in a plate carrier and, do it in front of your neighbors.
I don't know. That might be kind of funny.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not what I'm recommending, but I'm saying you need to think about it. You need to try to defecate in a primitive setting, with your gear on.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, just wearing gear is one of those things. When I go to a class, you're not supposed to judge people, and you generally don't, but you will look at people's gear, and you can sometimes get an idea of where they come from, depending on how their rifle is set up, and not even just the gear itself. If you took, I don't know, you took an Army SF guy he's been in for 15 years, and you give him a bunch of shitty gear, he's still not going to be uncomfortable in that gear, and he's not going to be uncomfortable with a rifle on him all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Those guys can, have you have a gun that long, carrying around day to day. It's different. You become very used to doing regular, dumb, mundane things, wearing guns and gear, and it shows. I mean, you can see when someone's comfortable with it or not. I'm sure half these guys could wives holding a rifle, and she wouldn't know the difference.
That's a weird visual.
Yeah.
But yes, a point driven home.
So yeah, I like the neckerchief more than the shemagh. And then the shemagh has become kind of like a fashion trend or something like that. One of my friends, one of his quotes was, he's like, "Man, when shit hits the fan, if I see someone running around with the Mosin the Gaunt and a shemagh, I'm just going to shoot him, maybe just so I don't have to talk to him." But I mean, a shemagh is a useful thing. I just like the neckerchief more. So yeah, and they're like $4.
Yeah,
but, it's not. I mean, they didn't even try to get sexy with the color. It's not like coyote, flat dark earth, urban dark earth. Dark urban dark earth. It's like brown. Number 42. It's like there's nothing sexy about that.
Yeah, I think shemaghs in a lot of ways have become like the rhinestone jeans of the tactical community. It's like, oh, you're still wearing that. All right.
Yeah, I mean, like the hipster community had it too. It's just kind of weird. It became like a political statement for a little while, and I just think I just found them too big, and they got in the way. So I like to put the neckerchief on. I'll tuck it behind my gear so it doesn't get in the way of anything. I can pull it out, wipe my face with it, whatever. And so, like, even when I was in Nebraska recently at a class, and I just had a belt rig on and my neckerchief. That was I mean, like, I had pants and boots and like a shirt on, but in regards to like my actual like just gear, it was just a belt and a neckerchief. So what I ran everything off of.
Yeah. So what are your gear pet peeves, leading off of what you were talking about as far as looking at other people or as far as your own stuff? What becomes your pet peeves about things?
What do I get tired of looking at? I don't know. Cross draw vests are really annoying just because it's it puts this pistol across your front exactly where your rifle mag should go. One of your primary reload points. Yeah, I don't know anything I like to call BDS, which is big, dumb, and stupid. I mean, there's one thing. I'm not saying everything has to be brand new by any means. I mean, like, this has been we've been at war for since 2001, right? So we've had a lot of hard lessons learned. We have this kind of continuum of gear, and nothing by any means has to be the very best, but when you have gear, you got to know how to use it. So it's something with fixed pouch positions, unless it's something like minimalist, like a little rack that just holds mags across the front. I don't like that because I like to be able to move things around and change things up. I don't know if there's that many pet peeves because there isn't a one size fits all. Everything should be scalable, and whether that means you have multiple belts or holsters or rigs or whatever, that's what it means. I mean, gear is, we talked about before, the second sexiest part that people find about prepping for anything, and it's important, but it holds nowhere close to the level of importance that people put on it. Like, there are some places on the internet where I saw a 14-page, not a discussion, like argument about belts. And I was like, I don't have opinions that strongly about belts. I mean, it's fine. I've got a lot of belts. I have pants belts and over belts and fighting belts, and I can talk about them. But when people like start to identify what belt they're wearing, like defining themselves. It gets weird. I guess super clean gear, especially if it's expensive, like kind of drives me a little nuts because it's never been used.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, sweet, you've got a Brocos ballistic belt from Tier Tactical. How much did that cost? Well, it looks brand new. Are you worried about your resale value on that?
Mm-hmm.
And some of the stuff, just the juice isn't worth the squeeze. But right now we have, I mean, because there's some really kind of low end gear, kind of someone would call airsoft grade, but I would just call it's just not. It just doesn't have the craftsmanship of the materials to hold up to anything. And so some of those you'll see it and that they haven't used it that long or that hard because it's still there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm sure that there is some place in the world a high point handgun that has made it like through 20,000 rounds without breaking too or malfunctioning.
Uh-huh.
But I mean, actually, people overfocus on it. And if you get out and you actually use it and you work in it, not only do you get comfortable in it and you know how to do things with it. I mean, you saw it at that class last year. Even just getting in and out of a vehicle. If you've never gotten in and out of a vehicle wearing gear before, you can't expect to do it when it's real time. Like some people are getting hung up and tripped up during a training evolution. What the hell happens if you have to do that for real?
Yeah.
And and then when you wear it more, I mean, it's just like anything else. A lot of people will start on one end and they'll go along a continuum, and people say, "Oh, gear snobs," and this and that, and sometimes that absolutely is the case. And I think it's overfocused, and I just like to have a high quality piece of gear that's going to last me. That's sort of what it really comes down to. Is I want something that's going to take the shit I can give it, and that is usually not the low end stuff. Yeah, so you're not going to hear me like, if you wear this, you are stupider than fuck. I mean, I don't have that.
Uh-huh.
Although I did talk shit on the cross draw zipper vest, so I mean, it just doesn't make sense to me outside of a car. It just doesn't make sense to me. It's very 1998.
Hey man, 1998 was badass. I remember the 1998.
Yeah, I actually just watched a training video from like 1998, and I almost died. And then one of my friends was like, "Yeah, well, 15 years from now," I'm like, 15 years from now, we better have flying cars and fucking laser weapons because I don't think it's gonna look as bad as that did.
Too funny. So now you are a writer and you write words and stuff like that. Tell us, firstly,
words and things stuff
about stuff and shit. How did you get into writing?
I got into writing as an extension of of teaching because I kept having students show up with fucked up gear setups. And I guess talking about gear and guns was what it started with. And they would have just gear configurations that didn't make sense. Like a pistol mag placement that was the opposite of what would be ergonomic or pragmatic. And so you crossing your body, doing weird stuff to get it. And so I started writing about gear. And I've always been into guns. I joined the Marine Corps. I kind of got that bug. So I wrote about gear and guns. And then it turned into, and I was, open publishing stuff. And it kind of turned into like a big boy job, just nerding out all the time, basically. I call it gun nerdery. And I like the technical aspects of guns and the more practical aspects of gear. When I look at the amount of just gear I've accumulated over the years, I'm kind of like, I didn't even like gear that much. I used to really hate it, and now I'm like, I deal with it more and talk about it. But it's kind of a hobby, and it turned into a thing. I never had to pay my mortgage with the training class, and I'm glad for that. A lot of guys and gals, when it becomes about paying your bill, you have to fill a class to pay your bills. A lot of people start eating some shit. They'll start endorsing things that they wouldn't otherwise if they weren't directly monetarily tied to it and they needed that money. And it doesn't happen to everyone, but it does happen a lot. So I'm thankful I never had to do anything with that. Plus, it's real. It can be a cutthroat industry.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So now you write for 2 publications.
I'm a writer and a content manager for Breach Bang Clear. and I do some work for Recoil Magazine, and then I do other stuff for a few other publications. And the other publications would be on a freelance basis. Yeah, I write, and usually about guns. I like foreign guns, especially. And it was just that didn't come from the foreign weapons instruction. Actually, my kind of love for the weird stuff, or the untraditional, or I don't know what you want to call it. Actually, is how I ended up with that job in the first place. So I mean, like I'm talking about FAMI rifles from Chile, man, stuff like that. You know, that gets me going. Kind of the weird stuff.
So, Dave, if someone wants to follow your writing and your illustrious career of abusing the English language, how would they do that?
Well, you can go to breachbangclear.com. That's where a lot of the stuff shows up, and then I'll have stuff on Recoil Magazine's webpage, which is recoilweb.com. I am a regular contributor to that. That's how you do it.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you for your service, and thank you for coming on today and sharing with us your real-world experience with gear.
I had a good time. And let's wait for comments to tell me I'm wrong about everything.
As everything goes in the gun world.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, dude. Thanks again.
Yep.
Get the show notes, links to gear mentioned in this episode, and links to Breach Bang Clear and Recoil Magazine by visiting intherabbithole.com/E161. And last but certainly not least, visit itrh.net today to find out about supporting the show and the benefits membership gets you. Go to itrh.net, do it today. With that, we wrap up episode number 161 from the Lone Star State. Till next time, stay safe and sound.